Welcome back. This is the fourth segment. I guess the last segment, I said the second segment was actually the third segment. I'm having sinus problems today. I had my nose broken when I was in college as part of the undergraduate experience in liberal arts education. And I always have sinus problems when there's a significant change in the seasons. I'm Mark Small. Paul Ogden is my co-host. We're Indianapolis Attorneys. This is Civil Discourse Now. Our guests today on the panel are Jeff Cox, who's also an Indianapolis attorney. He blogs on No Boxes Allowed. And Matt Stone, who's a Libertarian Party candidate for City County Council here in Indianapolis. He blogs on Indy Student. We are coming to you from Big Hat Books, which is located at 6510 Cornell in Indianapolis in Broad Ripple. They have excellent books here, excellent selection of books. They also have space for rent. If you have a special occasion or something, you can come in here. Anyways, we were just talking about referendum or referenda for sports stadiums or stadia, actually, legally correct, grammatically correct. My point was, if you had an election like that, they would stack it so much again that nobody would vote. And you'd have people so go blue and so, self-righteous about it. Nobody could walk in and vote against it. So it'd be kind of a shibboleth.
But that hasn't happened in other cities.
Well, that's Indianapolis. So Matt, what were you going to say?
I completely agree with you, Mark. That's the reality that we live in. This is a very sports addicted city. There's no way to put it, no other way to put it. When I was in high school, I think in my small Catholic school, like 98% of the student body was affiliated with was like in a sport in some form or another. I remember theater plays or practices repeatedly got pushed back constantly because Chicago had a really big football team and we were all about that football team.
Well, that's what bothered me when I was in high school. I mean, it cost like several $100s, which was a lot of bucks then, for a football uniform and pads and everything like that. And yet, when it came to debate or speech or any of the other activities that extracurricular, they wouldn't put any money into that. And yet, I think we only had one pro football player come out of the high school. I mean, yeah, it is overly addicted. Paul, you're going to talk about the Pacers.
Exactly. I talked about the Lucas Oil Stadium deal, but I also want to talk about the Pacer deal that they have with regard to Conseco Fieldhouse. We taxpayers built Conseco Fieldhouse. Mary Mills did a story, channel, I believe, 5, 6 or 13, I can't remember which one.
6.
Okay, channel 6, about how our debt has actually expanded on that. We actually owe more than we did originally. Regardless, the deal with the Pacers and Conseco Fieldhouse is they get to play in the stadium for free. They, as part of the deal, unlike Lucas Oil Stadium where we pay to run the facility, at Conseco, the Pacers said, let us run the facility and we'll just keep the revenue off the building. A couple of years ago, they said, we're not making enough money. We want you to pay to run the building. So we now pay $10 million a year to operate the building that they get to keep 100% of the revenue on. They also get signage, they get concessions. They get all the revenue. If you have a concert in Conseco Fieldhouse, 100% of the profit on that goes to, well, besides the performer, of course, goes to the Pacers. With regard to Lucas Oil Stadium, it's 50%. So now the Pacers even have a better deal than the Colts have.
And the Pacers have the worst team. I'm sorry. I mean, they made the playoffs this year, the first time they did.
No, they didn't.
I thought they did.
I don't think so.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, they made the first round, but they sucked.
Aren't they like? They were defeated by the Bulls.
Okay, you're correct.
They're kind of like steamroll, and so, okay, yeah, see, here's the thing about the Pacers. I remember in the early 80s when they had a telethon for the Pacers. Indianapolis was afraid they were going to lose the Pacers because the Pacers had been an ABA franchise. The NBA was able to really acquire 3 or 4 teams from the ABA. Pacers were one of them. Pacers really stunk, and not a lot of people went to games, and we were in danger of losing them. And the price tag for the franchise was something absurdly low, like $12 million. And they had a telethon here on Channel 13 to keep the Pacers in the city of Indianapolis. And So we did that, and that's part of the Indianapolis culture, is the Pacers have always been here. But if you look at what we make in terms of money, is it worth it? Are we supposed to take all that money that's from taxpayers and the tax base that could be used for schools and give it to a couple of billionaires? The Simons are billionaires, and so's Irsay. Simons own the Pacers, Irsay owns the Colts.
Correct. One of the things that the economists say is the money you spend on a Pacer game is disposable income. Let's say you spend $100, take your family of 4 to a Pacer game. I'm sure you could get there for $100. Make it $150, $200 for parking. You pay for tickets, you pay for parking, you pay for the $8 beer. Probably not too many of them. That is money that family could spend going out to a movie, going out to a restaurant. It is not new money. When you talk about amateur sports in Indianapolis, a lot of times you're talking about teams coming from outside the Indianapolis metro area. So they are bringing money in. When you're talking the Pacers, you're talking 41 games a year. You're talking about most of the people who attend those games are from the Indianapolis metropolitan area. You're just moving money from one part of the city to another.
That's not true in all cities, though.
In terms of where people come from?
Yeah, well, there's an assumption in those studies, and those studies are flawed in a number of ways. First, they assume like you're taking a family of 4 to a sporting event, and then you're all going to buy food, and you're all going to buy souvenirs and everything. I go to sporting events left and right. We rarely do that. We rarely buy food there. We rarely buy souvenirs. We're there to see the sporting event. But the other thing is, it might be true in Indianapolis, where the Colts are seen as another type of entertainment. But, someplace in Pittsburgh, like Pittsburgh, where football is a religion, if they're not spending that money on the Steelers, they're not going to spend on anything else. They're dedicated to the Steelers there. Most sports teams require an emotional commitment on the part of the fans that these studies can't seem to quantify.
Well, actually, there is a study from the University of Memphis that I was reading where it goes into things Patrick Napier talks about. The self-image, how can you quantify? I mean, getting back, you can't quantify like a kid having a hero or looking at a team as something guiding them in life, or sharing the experience of a team going to the final overtime of a championship game, and that's a shared communal experience. But those experiences in many ways are ephemeral compared to what you'd be doing in putting the money into an educational system or putting money into streets or bridges.
Well, you're assuming, and I'll disagree on that point, that we should put more money in education, because I think it's got enough money right now. It just isn't spending it well.
Especially the education system we have here in Indianapolis, especially the inner city.
I think our education will be another show.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
But like going to the game tomorrow, you're a Browns fan.
Right.
When the Colts play here against the Browns tomorrow, you will be sitting where?
I'll be at home watching it.
See, okay, and going back to another point you made.
I mean, Irsay gets enough of my money forcibly. Why should we give him more?
Well, also, I don't like going to football games live, because by the time you get up there to buy a beer and you get back to your seat where you're shoehorned in, you've missed 6 plays, and then you have to stand in line to use the restroom.
Now, see, I haven't had that problem. We go to Browns games in Cleveland. I go to Chargers games in San Diego. I haven't had that problem.
Oh.
I don't miss any plays.
How many beers do you drink during the game?
I typically don't drink. My obnoxiousness is all natural.
See, when we go to a baseball game, we'll spend, and I'll disagree with your numbers there. We will travel to another city for a baseball game. We will watch a baseball game. We will buy beers. We will buy food. We will buy souvenirs. We'll buy the shirts, a jersey. We'll buy.
You're gonna buy a $300 jersey every time you go to a baseball game?
Not every time.
Well, that's part of the assumption that these guys make. But
No.
if that team wasn't there, you wouldn't be traveling to that other city. That's not a rearranging of income for that city. That's new income that it wasn't getting before.
Yeah, but see, when we went to Detroit, we went there for Memorial Day weekend because we were going out of town when the 500 was run. And we were surprising a lot of people by being there during Memorial Day weekend when the race was here. So I think we were amongst a few people that had traveled into Detroit for that baseball game. And we were staying over in Windsor anyway. But those figures are accurate in terms of some things, as far as what people are paying in terms of, and it's astronomically high. The parking, the food, the drinks, the drinks. I keep coming back to the drinks because it's just outrageous that they're hitting me so heavy, and I just assume watch a football game at home.
There's also something called the crowding out effect. There are other things like when people know there's a Pacer or a Colts game in town, they're not going to go downtown to do other things. They're going to say, "Oh, I got to stay away from downtown." So there are other things besides the fact of moving money around.
Well, they do that for any big event downtown, whether it's Black Expo or the FFA or even Gen Con. There's a lot of big thing going on downtown. People will avoid downtown. One thing I would want to point out is that in terms of using tax money, public money for sports teams or sports venues, this is not a new phenomenon. If you go to Rome, the biggest monument they have there, the biggest ruin they have there is the Flavian Amphitheater, the Colosseum. That was a sports stadium, a dome sports stadium, believe it or not, which was paid for entirely with public funds.
Yeah, but how many Super Bowls did they win?
You don't challenge Rome on that.
We're getting down towards the end of the show. We've been talking about whether there's any value to higher education in the first two segments, and whether government should approach sports in the last two segments. We always do parting shots at the end of the show, which is 30 seconds on what anybody wants to do on anything. Matt, what do you want to say? You got 30 seconds starting now.
Please, if you live in the 7th District, which is part of Pike Township, please consider voting for me. I'm the Libertarian candidate for District 7. I'm running against a Democratic incumbent and a Republican challenger, but I hope to earn the votes. So, that's not 30 seconds.
Jeff?
That's enough.
This past March, North Korean GPS jammers forced down a U.S. military aircraft during maneuvers with South Korea. Now we have a situation with a U.S. company called LightSquare being accused of making technology that can force down U.S. aircraft and can mess up GPS jammers. It's accused of getting support from the Obama administration. Watch this story. It could have legs.
Paul, you got last word last time, so you got it now. The next to last.
Well, thank you. Today we've talked about the value of higher education. One thing I would urge people, before considering to get an advanced degree, an MBA, a JD, a PhD, do research in the field that you're looking at going into. Talk to professionals. Ask them what the job market is like. Because a lot of those people, I know a lot of lawyers would advise you not to get that JD. Mark?
I want to talk about death panels. Death panels came up like a couple of years ago because of President Obama's health revision. And everybody's saying that it called for death panels because there'd be a cost-benefit analysis done on whether extraordinary medical expenses should be set out for somebody in terminal stages of illness. I just got through watching Republican Tea Party debates where people were joyously cheering on Rick Perry because he's officiated over 234 executions, and also were cheering that a comatose patient, in a hypothetical, would be denied health care and die. So I think none of those people really weren't genuine when they were criticizing death panels as such. I'm Mark Small. I'm an Indianapolis attorney. Paul Ogden is my co-host. He's an Indianapolis attorney. Jeff Cox is a guest of ours today. He's an Indianapolis attorney. Matt Stone made the right decision. He's not an attorney, but he's a candidate for the Libertarian Party for City County Council here in Indianapolis. Thanks for tuning in to Civil Discourse Now. We'll be back next week.